Hello and welcome again. Another edition of the Pittsburgh Steelers Show on your SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Wil Masisak, a.k.a. Bradshaw Ben, a.k.a. Accidental Zen on Twitter. And with me, as always, to talk Steelers football and a bunch of stuff around the NFL are two of the best cohorts money can buy, except for money can't buy them. They're free. First, from somewhere in suburban zone 26, maybe today. His name is SteelPerch. He's with us. How are you, sir?
I am excited to be back.
Excellent. I'm glad you survived the pandemic so far. And also with us from somewhere in a monsoon deep in the south. His name is Dom. He goes by FC. He is with us also. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Can't complain.
How many inches of rain did you get this week?
40 some odd.
Yeah, that's a cubit is from the fingertip to the elbow. Just so you knew, if you're building the ark, you'll need to know. Very
right.
Perch, I'm going to start with you. What's that?
I feel like I live in Atlantis, the lost city underwater.
Nice. If Kevin Costner comes by in a boat, you'd be worried. Be very worried. I'm going to start with you, Perch, since you missed last week while you were off on your adventures fishing. So, open table. The Steelers game against the Giants. Steelers off season. Talk to us, Steelers.
Well, that's pretty open-ended there. It's just a couple of things that really stood out from the Giants game. I've talked about on this program at least several dozen times about evaluating quarterbacks, and you and I have discussed it over the years. And the number one thing I always look for is where do their eyes go, what happens to them when they're under pressure. And Ben, the biggest thing I've always loved about him is he would take any hit. His eyes never came off downfield. He looked to make the big play. First time I ever saw that not happen was last Sunday or on Monday night. That first quarter, you could tell he was very nervous. Hadn't been hit. I mean, just not having a preseason and not having played for an entire year. And the first time he did get tackled, he goes down and checks his elbow. And, you could visually see what was going on inside of his brain up until that little 2-minute drill where he kind of got comfortable. But just the game plan up to that point was run, pass, try and protect him, nothing downfield. It was just strange, to have not had a legitimate preseason game to kind of get the guy to come back. And then kind of the opposite side of the spectrum, boy, did those rookies look comfortable and savvy and veteran, like just, Chase Claypool at the end of the game. We saw Antonio Brown at the end of the game take a little sweep like that and run out of bounds instead of, kneeling down to clock it. And Claypool did the right thing, and just how he got his feet down on that tough pass early in the game. And Highsmith just looked like, one, he showed his burst, but two, just how comfortable he looked. He and Ola both when they were in there in waves. So just kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum. The veteran quarterback coming out a little bit skittish and nervous early, and how smooth those two rookies were. The two things that really kind of stuck in my mind leaving that game.
Well, sure. Well, to Perch's point, FC, it kind of feels like the game plan was preseason game, get the run game clicking, ease the quarterback back into playing for the first time in the year. Otherwise I'd have been like pulling my hair out about the number of runs to passes on first and second down. It seems like that was sort of a legit thing to do against a poor opponent, but for a little while there, it was scary, was it not?
It was. That would be my most disappointing thing from the game, to be honest with you, was probably the offensive play calling. But I understand why they did what they did. Sometimes safe isn't good. Safe isn't the best thing to do. But they got the win. I pretty much agree with everything that Perch had to say there about the backup outside linebackers, Ben being rusty and a little bit trepidatious, after he took the hit, and things tightened up a little bit. I think you've seen flashes and glimpses of Ben prior to the 2019 season.
Yeah, I mean, it's like at least he got around to being Ben, right? I mean,
Right.
which is the important thing. But as far as the run game, Perch, with obviously some of it is just like getting rolling with real live action for the run game for the first time this year. But James Conner did not really add to any kind of confidence level that either A, he's going to be super effective, or B, he's going to remain uninjured for a whole season. What was your take on that?
I'll start on the other side of it. Boy, Benny Snell seemed to have a burst that I don't remember him showing at Kentucky or even last year. It looks like he kind of remade his body a little bit, and he was running away from linebackers chasing him a number of times. Yeah, he maybe picked up an extra 3 or 4 yards, but you could see his acceleration and burst. James Conner went the opposite way. It's like he started to, when he remade his body when he came from Pitt and then came here, and then he had that really good season, he had more speed and burst than you ever remember him having in college, and that seems to all have gone away. I don't want to overreact too much to one game, but he couldn't make it through one game again. I think that the writing's on the wall that I think the best part of his football career was left at Pitt and 2 years ago here, and I think that those injuries are catching up to him. I mean, the guy's undergone cancer treatment and had a number of season-ending injuries and just little nagging things, and I just don't have a lot of faith for him. Now, they're saying he's back and running with the starters yesterday, and he may start again next week, but it'll be interesting to see if Snell continues to outproduce him, how long it takes before, Benny Snell is the official number one. But yeah, I'll give it a couple more weeks before I make any absolute statements on it. But to the untrained eye, just looking at it, even before he got injured in that game, the burst seems to have gone down for him and up for Snell.
Yeah, and it's it's hard to make any hard, fast determinations from week one in the NFL. A lot of weird stuff happens week one. So FC, in terms of since we're on to injuries, we talked a little bit about James Conner injuries. The offensive line. What was your take on offensive line play, both where they started and then with the 5 they ended up with in the game? What was your take on that situation?
It was rough. It's hard to really give an opinion of Kevin Dotson. I was a big fan coming out of college. I mean, he played 11 total plays in the game. He looked solid enough. Villanueva's struggles a little bit because of how tall he is. Has some struggles re-anchoring, but he was solid in pass prep. I actually thought Marquise Pouncey looked pretty good, probably as good as he's looked in a couple of years. The Zach Banner injury, I thought was tragic. Just watching, his reaction on the field. Chuck's, I think that him and Banner were head and head. So I don't think there's going to be a humongous step down. There. My bigger concern is what's going on with David DeCastro.
Sure.
From there, it's tough. I wasn't shocked that the Steelers struggled at times, with Dexter Lawrence and Tomlinson. I think they're both good players. I think the Giants are going to be a better defense than people think. I think they're going to struggle, against the pass. But I think they're going to be a fierce team against the run. They got big bodies. Blake Martinez is a nice, inside linebacker for a 3-4. Very smart, understands what teams are trying to do, reads blocking schemes real well. It's easy to say the Steelers' offensive line was a negative because the run game really didn't work. But, overall, I thought they played pretty well. And
what did you think of Matt Fiedler? Or Fiedler?
He's solid at left guard. I don't think that there was proclamations made that he's going to be, a top left guard. I don't know if that's going to be true, but I think he'll be definitely in the upper half of the NFL at left guard. He'll be definitely above the average line.
I'm laughing because it was me, of course, who said that I thought he would be a top.
No. Actually, it was Mike Prosciutta said that he thinks that he may end up being the best guard in the history of the Steelers franchise, which I thought was a little bit of hyperbole considering we've actually had a few decent guards over the years.
Couple of good guards. Interesting. Well, let's go over to the defense for a second. Perch, I couldn't help but watch the game and think that the guy who enjoyed the Steelers game in the Steelers organization, the guy that enjoyed it the least was Omar Khan, because somehow he has to figure out a way. Like, I'm sure he was thinking, how am I going to pay Bud Dupree and Juju, two guys that everyone pretty much assumes can't be paid, there's not enough money, but who were pretty much two of the biggest stars on the field. What would you take away from Bud Dupree's performance in this game for starters?
Well, I'll back it up one more if you're going to go down that path. Isn't the left tackle, left guard, and starting right tackle all free agents at the end of the year, and the center's old, and his twin brother just had basically a career-ending injury? I mean, the offensive line's got major issues coming up, and that's not even talking about Bud Dupree, who they probably can't afford, Juju, who they probably can't afford. They've got some serious, for them to have not extended any of those guys, it's a little bit frightening to see what the hell's going to happen. I guess they don't know where the salary cap's going to be with all this COVID craziness and the loss of revenue. But the first thing that stuck out on defense to me, being that I'm a negative Nancy, if it's third down and you're playing the Steelers, find who Terrell Edmonds is covering and throw it to him, because it's like a guaranteed 100% first down every time. And that 18-play drive, I think he gave up 3 or 4 first downs in coverage. I hate to pile on a guy that everybody else seems to pile on. I think he does a pretty good job in the box, and he's a pretty solid tackler. But he's always just a step out of place in coverage, and teams are going to see that, and they're going to continue to target him. Otherwise, on D, I think Alulu probably needs some love. I mean, he did a very good job at nose tackle, very active. The whole defensive line just dominated. Saquon Barkley couldn't get going anywhere. Devin Bush looks like the athlete we thought he was, but now his brain is caught up, so he doesn't have to think so much, and he just is flying around to the ball everywhere. And Dupree was probably the best player in the field, for as much as we've ragged on him over the years for not quite getting it. He was a stud in that game.
Yeah, I feel like, you can, in a way about Edmonds, like going back to that for a second, it's really hard to gauge because, even if you're a pretty good player, if you're the worst player on any given defense, you're going to get targeted a lot, and your success rate is not going to be as good as the other guys. On the other hand, yeah, it feels like he's playing like Sean Davis right now, in that he's lining up a little bit too deep, and he's taking a little too long to make his determination about what to do, and he ends up being a step late to pretty much everything in the NFL. Even with him being plus athlete, it's just that much longer for him to get to the play. He did make a couple plays. He got Evan Ingram early in the game to help break up, a third down, would have been a third down conversion. But yeah, it's an issue. FC, I was more concerned in a way with Minka kind of bailing on Steven Nelson a couple of times and allowing 2 touchdowns. I mean, the one deep touchdown was kind of like, they only had 4 guys in coverage for a bunch of routes. But did you notice that I thought the slant on the touchdown that Minka bit away from that slant, and Steven Nelson, had no help to the inside. You think Minka, with the moving around from time to time, is maybe going to try to do too much? How did you see it?
Is that for me?
Yeah, that's for you, actually.
On the slant, I believe that Steven Nelson lined up with inside technique, and I don't think he can get beat to the middle of the field. So definitely the long touchdown pass to Darius Slayton, the first one, I definitely would say was on Minka. I think they were in a combination coverage of cover 2 with like a quarters look. It was ugly. But I think he got beat there. I think on the second touchdown, I think Steven Nelson had inside technique and gave up the inside. So I lean more to blaming him. I hear both your points. I thought that Edmonds was actually probably the worst player on the Steelers defense against the Giants. I actually would argue that I can't believe I'm going to say this, Alu might have been one of the best players on the Steelers defense. Watching what he did against Will Hernandez, cannot block this pass block to save his life. He's a hell of a run blocker against Kevin Zeitler, who's another pretty good run blocker. He did a very good job holding up against the run. Minka has got a little bit of a riverboat gambler to his game where he did get caught on, the one pass play. I have a feeling that throughout the season he's going to get caught a few more times, but he's going to create some splash plays. Overall, if I had to use one word to describe the Steelers' defense against the Giants, boy, were they fast. They just look fast at every level. All four outside linebackers have played. Vince Williams played fast. It was a solid overall performance.
I think we probably should point out before we dump on the secondary too much is just they sold out to stop Saquon in the running game. And they put their corners and their one deep safety, Fitzpatrick, on an island for a lot of the game. And Tomlin even alluded in this post game to, hey, we put our secondary in some tough positions out there because they were basically selling out to stop her. They weren't going to let Saquon get going, and they thought that, hey, we can keep Daniel Jones bottled up enough just by pressuring him and taking away his run game and putting him in third and long. So I think that's probably what happened with some of the miscommunications with Fitzpatrick back there, where he had a lot of responsibilities, and the same thing with the two corners as well. Is just they were tasked with a pretty big task of manning up on a guy and shutting him down across the field. So I think that'll get resolved here with a different game plan in a different week.
Yeah, and it just it was the smart thing to do. Basically, you knew they were going to force it to Saquon, especially with the condition of that offensive line in pass protection. But it turns out that they really could run block a lot better anyway than they could pass protect. Giants O-line, definitely a problem. Just one last thing before we move on. Just about Ben for a second. Once he got going, did either of you feel like, there was something with the arm that's like, he's never going to be, or he isn't 100%, he's maybe never going to be the same guy again? Or did you just forget about all that and enjoy the play and think that he looked 100%? I'll start with you, Perch.
Oh, to me, the arm looked 100%. The only thing that really concerned me was the brain. That first half, really, up until that 2-minute drill, he was nervous. He was playing scared. He was playing not to get hurt, which I think it's understandable. First game back, off of a year, major surgery, and no preseason games to really get hits. Once he got going, I did not see a single pass that fluttered or looked slow or didn't look like Ben of pass. To me, it was just more of a mental thing of, is he going to play cautious this year to kind of protect his body and afraid because he had a major injury? And I don't know that we have the answer to that yet. I think that obviously it looked positive, in the second, basically from that 2-minute drive through the second half, he looked kind of like Ben of old again. But the arm strength, I had no issues.
Yeah. FC, any issues for you?
I completely agree with what Perch just said. My concern would be if he was attempting to overthrow the ball, get his hips, his lower body more into it, which would lead to, the tip of the ball, like heading towards the ground because he didn't trust the strength of the shoulder, the arm, and the elbow. I've seen none of that. I actually thought that he threw the ball with as good of touch as he has in years. The ball to Claypool, great catch. Also, great ball. And
Ebron, the conversion to Ebron on third down, I thought was a great
great ball. Actually, what I thought could have been caught, the James Washington 35 or 40-yard pass, there was another great ball. He looked way better than we could hope for. Let's just put it that way, especially after the first quarter. The last 3 quarters of that game, that is all that every Pittsburgh Steeler could hope for with Ben. The legs look good. He had a nice little 12-yard scramble, threw beautiful balls, made good decisions with the ball, took a few hits. I was very, very satisfied.
Excellent. Me too. I felt the same way. Just the apprehension at first with every throw, like it's just going to be the last throw. But yeah, I mean, the moment he made that, like to me, that it was the Ebron throw, the third down conversion, even the throw to Claypool, to an extent, made me ease up a little bit, and then the completion to Ebron where it was under pressure, third down, and he dropped it in a bucket on a deep crossing route. I thought that was pretty impressive. Let's move on to this week's opponent, the Denver Broncos, coming into Heinz Field for the home opener, which feels like it's the home opener, but is it really like with fans? Is it going to feel like a home game? That I don't know. So anyway, the game against Denver, I watched their game this week. I mean, first thing that strikes me, let's talk about the Broncos offense against the Steelers defense. I think once again, it's a matchup where the Steelers have a really dominant front seven on defense, and they're facing an offense that does not have a particularly good offensive line, and they're very, very young, not just on offensive line, but the skill players. I'll start with you, Perch. What's your take on this matchup, Steelers defensive front versus the Denver Broncos offensive line?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's going to be very similar to last week, where you've got a young, fairly mobile, fairly solid quarterback with some good young receivers. The running game might be the most dangerous part of it. The offensive line and the continuity of them is probably not quite up to speed. So that's going to be something. And I think, is Cortland Sutton officially out for this game, or just looking like he's out? I mean, they were basically chucking the ball to Jerry Jeudy like crazy in his first ever NFL game, and mixed results there. But KJ Hamler and Deshaun Hamilton are real good receivers too. But again, very green. New to that offense, and boy, it's hard to see them really, tricking Steelers or just sustaining a lot of drives against them. They've got some good tight ends too, but really, I think it's going to come down to that. Can that offensive line protect, and they can be able to establish a run game? If they can't establish their run game, third and long against the Steelers, they're going to be able to, mix in some blitzes and just beat some people and confuse the quarterback, and it's going to be a long day. I mean, I think the Steelers have a better defense than Tennessee, and these guys got held to, 2 touchdowns against Tennessee.
Yeah, and FC to that end, I mean, in a way, like I thought last week's matchup couldn't have been much more ideal. Young quarterback, very poor offensive line. But this week's also same deal. Not only that, but another young quarterback who has a propensity to make risky throws across the middle and risk turning over the football. What's your take on this matchup? Where, by the way, Juju Smith-Schuster would be the most experienced offensive skill position player they have on Denver if he were over there. So we're talking really, really young and green. What's your take, MC?
Denver's got super athleticism and skill at the skill position player at skill positions. You have Hamler, you have Judy, you got Hamilton. Cortland Sutton, I don't believe is going to play. You also have Noah Fan. I believe Jake Bott is their second tight end. He's actually pretty decent. Their offensive line is mismatched. Drew Lock got an absolute howitzer for an arm. Not very accurate. He does take way too many chances. I think the one thing that really concerns me is both Gordon and Lindsey are threats in the passing game. For them to be involved in the passing game, they're going to put Drew Lock's health at serious risk. But I think the only way that Denver can score enough points to threaten the Steelers in this game is they're going to have to take risks. So that would be my concern. Joe Hayden concerns me more and more every game I watch. I've never been a huge fan, and that is the one. Last week it was Alu that was concerning me. I have some concerns about Joe Hayden heading this week. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the classic worry work, but that would be my one concern.
Yeah, it's easy to start to develop that opinion about Hayden. It's definitely been some kind of drop in performance, although as a team, it seems to be working, so it's hard to criticize too much. But Perch, getting back to something you alluded to earlier with Terrell Edmonds being the weak link, to me, Noah Fant, watching the game last week, that's the most dangerous weapon that they have going. And it feels like your strong safety is going to get matched up against that guy no matter what you do to try to avoid it. How do the Steelers try to keep from that situation of getting this Terrell Edmonds against Noah Fant?
Oh, Jamin at the line. You know, you got Devin Bush too. So I mean, maybe they play some games there with Devin Bush on him, who's, you know, as athletic as any tight end that you'll come across. But yeah, the problem really isn't with Edmonds running or staying with the guy. It's just like we said, he's a little slow to react, a little bit cautious. He's always right there to make the tackle, but he's never there to break the pass up. He's going to let you catch that pass for 10 yards on 3rd and 8 and make the tackle, and you're not going to get 11. You know, it's something he needs to. He's so athletic. He should be better in coverage than he is. It's just more of a, you know, positioning and timing and reaction sort of a thing with him. He's just, I think, being a little bit cautious. But yeah, I'm sure they'll pick up some 3rd down conversions just throwing at Edmonds. I mean, after watching the tape last week, why would you not?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is they don't have that much to lose. You know, it's a travel game for them, which is their travel now for, I think, any team is going to be a little different. You know, they're going to have some more protocols to deal with and so on. So there's that, and it's a situation where they're a little overmatched in the trenches. To that end, let's flip over to the other side. FC Steelers offense against the Denver defense. One thing I'll say about Denver is I think I'll make a statement. You see if you agree or disagree. I think Denver's defensive front is the best in the NFL at defending the stretch play, which is not necessarily the bread and butter of the Steelers' run game, but it feels like running stretch against them is a good way to like waste a few downs. What's your take?
I can understand why you feel that way. They play to merge everything inside. They play hard. I do have some questions about how they're going to be able to take on the power run game, because Darrell Casey going from, you know, a 3-4 DN to basically a 3-technique defensive tackle. That's going to work for a week or two, but it's not going to work for an entire season. He just doesn't have the body type to hold up. And they asked him to 2-gap. If he ain't going to 2-gap versus the Steelers. I think that losing both their outside pass rushers to basically to COVID and to injury, that's a huge loss for them. Denver plays fast. They play hard.
Chubb is out of the game also, FC? Sorry. This is news to me.
You bleeped out there for a second.
Oh, sorry. Chubb, there's a problem with Chubb. I didn't hear that. Is he injured? Or
my understanding is he's questionable. Even if he does play, okay, and if he does, he's going to be hell on wheels. But, you know, the Steelers are going to give help to Chucks if he starts to really become a problem. So if Chubb plays, he plays the run. I see Bradley Chubb as a very similar player to Bud Dupree long-term in the NFL, meaning what Bud Dupree has become. That's the top end of what Bradley Chubb is going to be. I don't necessarily know if he's at that level yet. I'm not taking anything away from him. He's a very solid player. I just don't think he's going to be the 15 to 20 sack guy that some people expect him to be. I think he's going to be a more 8 to 10 sack game.
Man, the disrespect for Anthony Chickalo in this podcast is running pretty deep right now. I know he's backing up over there.
Yeah.
Well, attached. How do you say his name? Jeremiah Atashu.
Yeah. Yes.
He's playing that side against Chooks and Chubb on the other side. I think they kind of kept them mostly to their sides, and it feels like that's a good it's a good test for troops without it being an overwhelming matchup. Maybe the Steelers will have some luck with that. All Anthony Chickillo jokes aside, we have a new tackle who hasn't played before. FC, do you think that's going to be a cause for concern, or how do you feel about those two new guys on the right side?
I'm concerned. I really like Dawson. I think that if there was a normal offseason, I don't think that Kevin Dawson's the fourth-round pick. I thought that he and Robert Hunt, who played left tackle beside him at Louisiana, were both phenomenal players. I think that we're going to have some very interesting things going on the longer DeCastro's on. I'm not going to say he's going to take DeCastro's job. But if we continuously have a struggle at right tackle, if Chuck isn't up to par, and let's say DeCastro's out 2 or 3 more weeks, and Dawson plays solid, I won't be shocked to see Byler move back out the right tackle and Dawson move in the left guard. I'm a big believer in Kevin Dawson. I have no reason to be at the NFL level. I just watched him play, and I expected him in college, and I expected him to be devastated for 2 years. And he played against big boys, and not only did he hold his own, he did very well. A lot of people don't realize he was a second-team All-American, all conferences included. And there were some pretty good offensive linemen over the last year or two. You got to remember all the pub that the Alabama, the LSU, and those types of players get. So a guy coming out of the Sun Belt to be voted second-team All-American, you're doing something right.
Yep. No, and he was dominating. A lot of starts, a lot of experience for him as a starter. 50-some games as a starting guard in college, and that experience definitely helped him be able to sort of
time to me. Dexter Lawrence, whenever he rolls somebody on his heels, since he was 8 years old, that person was generally going on their back, their butt, or sideways, and Dexter Lawrence was just going to dominate. Dawson not only re-anchored, and he punched Lawrence in the throat. Literally got his hands up, where it was technically illegal, and he completely stopped Lawrence dead in his tracks. And that's where I was like, we may have something here.
Sure. The Perch, I guess, my concern is you got the 2 new young guys in there, and you have a guy like Dotson at guard who is a people mover that the Steelers are going to want to come and dominate as a running offense in this game. I'm not saying they can't do that or be successful, but doesn't it feel like there'd be a little bit wasting time and wasting downs in terms of moving the football and turning over the chains if they attempt to run too much in the middle of this defense?
Well, I guess the alternative is to have an inexperienced offensive line and throw too much and get your quarterback killed. So we know what's going to happen.
But hang on, there's a third way. It's the quick passing game that doesn't really put your quarterback at risk, but gets you ball to your receivers out in space. That seemed to work great for the Steelers for like 5 years. So why do we feel like it's impossible to do that and keep the quarterback protected?
Possibly. Is Ben going to start the game skittish and nervous again? It's like they wanted to protect him so much in that last game. The whole first half, for the most part, it was a lot run, pass. They really never did throw anything deep downfield. But even to come out, like you said, in kind of like that hurry up or just short passing game, I think that would be effective. No, I don't think they're going to do it. I think they're going to be as conservative as humanly possible. They're going to try to eliminate turnovers, eliminate hits on the quarterback, protect the young offensive line. All these things are just building into this big, massive ball of conservative offense. And I think they'll probably keep this game closer than it probably should be for a long period of time.
And it's just so, I don't know. I don't see it. I just feel like that is you are just giving up downs in a football game in a league where people that aren't that good can still get a play here and there and move the chains because of the way that the rules are. FC, you agree with Perch that's what will happen? It'll be a conservative plan?
No, it's just the way we roll. It's just the way things. That's what Mike Tomlin's comfortable with, and that's what he dictates. He's risk adverse until it's time to take a risk. So, yeah, I agree with Perch. I don't like it. I don't think any of us like it. I think that if the Steelers came out first play of the game, put the ball in Connor or Snell's belly and threw the ball vertically to anybody on the field, Deontay Johnson, James Washington, Eric Ebron, Juju, this play action pass first time, if it's incomplete, so be it. If it's a completion, you're going to back off the defense. And if it's an interception, it's time to be conservative and not do that shit again, But I'm definitely not risk adverse whenever it comes to football. I think if you back the safeties out of the box early, I think the Steelers defense or Steelers offense can be a juggernaut. I hope that they were just trying to ease Ben back into things, let him see live fire, and we're going to be more of attacking offense. But that's a pipe dream. We all know it's not going to happen. We're going to do what we do.
Yeah, I mean, my only argument would be, and even from their standpoint, if last week was a preseason game where they try to get the run game together and try to, get everything working in sync and get their quarterback at ease, the missing piece of the, preseason and preparation for the season at large is getting your quarterback in a flow, where he has a chance to really get rolling. Because at some point in the season, maybe not this week, but when you face Baltimore, when you face Kansas City, they're going to need that quarterback to be able to roll. They're not going to be able to count on Benny Snell dominating some game and, playing conservative football against a team like that. As much as they might want to be risk averse against those teams, chances are they're going to have to score some points. And the way you do that is to have your quarterback, who's the most point scoringest guy on your team, make some plays. And I don't know, I got lost. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going with that as a question, but it just feels like there's got to be some time where you get him used to letting it rip before you're down by 2 touchdowns in some game late in the season that you really need to win, right? Don't you have to get good at that, Perch? I think that was you that made that point. It's like you can't just go a whole season. This is from conversation from 2009 or 2012. You can't go a whole season and then ask the guy to turn it on at the end when you need him desperately in the playoffs. That's sort of a Perch question.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we know who the Steelers are, and especially when they have a good defense. Remember back to 2008, 2005, 2004. They're going to do everything they can to establish their run game, to eliminate turnovers, to be cautious, to let that defense keep them in the game, and their philosophy is we'll win it at the end. And you know what? Ben's a pretty goddamn good guy to have to win it at the end, because you saw Rusty Ben off of a year of surgery and not playing football. The first 2-minute drill he gets, he just surgically moves downfield. He's just so good at it. So, it's a successful winning formula for them that they've, done over the years. Now, I think FC thinks this team's good enough to blow some teams out, to come out and hammer down first half and just put up some points and get a lead and let your defense play with the lead and just suffocate some teams. It's just not in their DNA. It'll just continue to frustrate us. So I'm not going to expect them to change.
I just think back to 2008 again, opening week against the Houston Texans. Steelers did that. They let it rip in the first half, got out to a big lead, and then took the air out of the football, won 27-3 or whatever it was. To me, that's a perfectly acceptable way to win and use your running game, to keep you from making too many mistakes later in the game and so on. But it's a lot easier and feels a lot better to do that when you've got a big lead than it does to count on keeping it close and winning at the end against a team that's inferior. I know that we've gone round and round in this program on this thing, but it's just I got to say it one more time, especially when you see last year compared to this year, and you understand, last year we got, they were perfectly capable of keeping it close, but they let teams hang around, and because the quarterbacks, even with the Steelers having a really good defense, the other team found a way to make a play here or there that was the difference in the game. Why keep it close? I like running up the score. It's nice. We haven't got a chance to do that very much in the history of this show, since 2008. Not too many times where the Steelers looked like they were running up the score. every once in a while, once a season. Carolina 2 years ago. Anyway, I think for the moment that'll have to do it for our matchup. Let's talk about let's go on to our illustrious pick segment, brought to us by
Mike Pereira, Dean Blandino, Sports and Shit, Chico's Bail Bonds, and how about we go with probably the best Steelers game I heard in a national broadcast, Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler, who I thought did an absolutely delightful job.
There you go. I thought you were going to say, what was it? Not Bernie Snell. What was it? What did he call him? Donnie Snell? Oh.
Herbstreit. I love Herbstreit, but he butchered some names in that game. You could tell he was out of his element a little bit, trying to catch up to these NFL rosters. I like you said, I think that's one of the best broadcast tandems going. A lot of those college ones are really good compared to the NFL ones who just get real annoying, but he really butchered some names in that game, both sides too.
But in all seriousness, yes, that was a delightful broadcast for a change. It's good. I think also just good to have somebody different calling games. I think we
talking about butchered names. I don't want to point this out, but Baker Mayfield got called Johnny Manziel 3 times in that Bengals game yesterday, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I found it very humorous.
I'm not sure if it was either, but yeah, that if the shoe fits, you know.
You mean that's not the same guy?
Yeah, same guy, different.
Yeah, sure, that's the same.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen. Around the league segment. Let's start with Jacksonville, Tennessee. Jacksonville is a 7.5-point favorite. I'm not sure I get that. This game seems a lot closer than that to me. I'll start with UFC. What's your take? Jacksonville, 7.5-point dog at Tennessee.
I thought Jacksonville was supposed to be tanking for Trevor Lawrence, and then something crazy happened last week. You know, 7.5 is a lot to give. I lean towards taking the 7.5. I just can't do it. I'll take the Titans. I'll lay the 7.5. I think they're going to win by 10 points. But Jacksonville has some spunk.
Yeah, the quarterback. They got a quarterback, man. I'm going to take Jacksonville in the 7.5. I think Jacksonville's better than we think they are, and I'm not really sure Tennessee is all that. I guess we'll find out. It's just that. Speaking of that mentality of we're just going to run the shit out of the football and convert some third downs with our quarterback and win a close game. That didn't. I mean, that only worked, I think, last week because the other team had so many problems getting field goals. Or was that then? No, they kept it close because they have field goal kicking problems. That's what I should say. Anyway, Perch, what's your take on this game?
Yeah, at what point do we just, give up and say, hey, I think Gardner Minshew is actually a pretty good quarterback? I mean, he's got a full season. It's not like he's had a stretch of 3 or 4 games that he played pretty well. He's got a full season in. He's played good football, and he came out and played good football last week. And, yeah, they have depleted their roster quite a bit, but I think that they'll be competitive all season long. This game's in Tennessee, and I think Tennessee's a little bit better than what they showed last week. So, division rivalry game, that half point, that 7.5 is tough. I think I'm going to go ahead and take Tennessee to cover, but I wouldn't be shocked if I was wrong on that.
This seems like it'd be entertaining. That's what it feels like. Next game, New England at Seattle. Perch, are you buying Cam Newton as the new stud quarterback at New England with the answers to the test? New England's getting 4 points at Seattle.
I'm buying Belichick. I mean, what have they really lost? They lost an old, aging quarterback, replaced him with a younger one, and they've got a really good defense, and they've got the best coach in the history of coaching. I think that the Patriots are going to be annoyingly good and surprisingly around all year. How long can you keep Cam Newton away from the turnovers and the issues that have plagued him? But if that defense is keeping the other team down to 17 points and you can play a little bit more conservative with him and let him run like he ran like crazy last week, I think that they're going to continue to be a double-digit win team with whoever they stick at quarterback. I'm going to take the Pats in that game.
FC didn't like 15 Patriots opt out of the season? Like how are they smoke and mirrors, man?
They're a very well coached team. I'll give the Doubles due. They're a very well coached team. They play as a team. They play as cohesive units. That being said, I watched Seattle and Atlanta last week. Boy, do I have no idea about either one of those teams, and I'll explain why. Seattle's offense is going to be explosive. Russell Wilson, I think this is going to be funny. Might be one of the more underrated players in the NFL. Because you hear Patrick Mahomes, you hear about all these players. Russell Wilson is really, really fucking good. I mean, he is really good. I look at Patrick Mahomes maybe as Ted Williams, and I look at Russell Wilson as Joe DiMaggio, and I understand Joe DiMaggio got a lot of credit. It's just they're both so good. Thing is Atlanta's offense, whenever it was not money, or when the game was out of control, they threw the ball at will on Seattle. I don't think that Cam Newton's going to be able to throw the ball at will. I'm going to take the Seahawks. The reason I'm going to take the Seahawks is I think that they can score more than New England can, and I'm not sure that New England is going to be able to slow them down enough.
Yeah, Perch, how do you feel? Oh, you already picked. I'll take I'll take Seattle and give them 4. I do believe in New England, but it's like I don't think they're going to be quite as good as they were in the past. They'll still be good and good enough, but maybe not to go to Seattle in a primetime game and win. So I will take the Seahawks. Last one, New Orleans at Las Vegas. We really, put a lot of stock in the Las Vegas Raiders, but it feels like they could at least put up some points with New Orleans. How do you feel about this game, FC? By the way, Vegas is a 5.5-point dog at home.
Right. This is going to be my shocker. I'm taking Vegas in the 5.5 points. There's a few things that I took from that Saints game. One, Drew Brees throws the ball like my biggest fear that Ben was going to throw the ball this year. I don't think that Drew Brees can literally throw the ball 45 yards down the field without putting a ton of air under it. Emmanuel Sanders is going to be useless in that offense without a quarterback with a live arm. Michael Thomas got dinged. Alvin Kamara is explosive and fantastic and all that. John Gruden got Vegas believing. And somehow, some way, he's made Derek Carr into something decent. And they have a bunch of explosive weapons, too. I think the Saints are going to come in there with big heads. I think Vegas is going to win the game outright by like a field goal.
Nice. Perch, what's your take?
Yeah, I think Michael Thomas is supposed to be out for a couple weeks, which is going to hurt the Saints a bit. I just have a hard time ever believing in anything with the Raiders. I mean, I just don't. I'm not a huge Gruden fan either. It'll be a close game. What was the line on that? Was it 6?
I think it's 5.5. Yeah, 5.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take the Saints anyway. I think the Saints have a better defense than they're given credit for, and Drew Brees will find somebody to throw to, and they'll win the game by a touchdown.
Yeah, you guys know Raiders going to have any fans in the stands? For this is their home opener.
I think it's 33% full.
Yeah, I feel like it's a first game in their new stadium. That tends to be a like a difference maker in a lot of these games. It's very rare to lose your home opener in a new stadium. Can't remember the last time that happened. So and Michael Thomas injury, that's a huge deal for them. That's been Breeze's bailout guy when the game is tight. So I think it simplifies his defense a little bit to not have that one ticket taken out of the raffle box, as it were. So I'll take Vegas and the 5.5 points. I don't
know if this is accurate. I got a real quick report here that actually Vegas is going to fill to 60% of capacity. So you might be talking.
What could go wrong? What could possibly
Rick Harrison, whoever Rick Harrison is actually willed them into allowing 60%. Pawn Stars, Rick Harrison. So there you go. according to this news story I found here.
Nice, beautiful. Well, we'll have to wait and see. That does it for our illustrious pick segment. That moves us to our 5-star matchup. It's a 5-star matchup because the Steelers are in it, and they were in it pretty good last week. By the way, maybe we'll keep track for a change on this show. Perch scored 24 points with his prediction last week. FC 23. Yours truly only 19, although we all did pretty well overall, all things considered. I'll start with you, FC. What's your take on this week's Steelers-Denver matchup? Give me a prediction.
I'll give you the score real quick. I think the Steelers are going to win the game 27-13. And now I'm going to do a little bit. Yeah, 27-13 Steelers. Now I'm going to do a little bit of bitching. I'm trying to figure out what our thought process was in the offseason with signing Eric Ebron and not doing something with Vance McDonald. Because we're not going to be 2 tight ends. Ever. Really. We're not. They like Watt a lot, so we're going to have a fullback in when we're going to try to run the ball. So that kind of seemed repetitive, and Dallas has a very big hole right now at tight end. Dalton Schultz is going to play. They lost Sherwin for the year, and I think Vance McDonald would look great in Texas again if we can maybe work out a trade, get anything for him. But my biggest concern is obviously going to be the right side of the offense line for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Alejandro Villanueva, though he's catching some shit this week, which I think is an absolute joke. I am going to be concerned about him going against Bradley Chubb. Getting Jarrell Casey blocked is going to be a big deal. But overall, I think that I believe in Ben. I trust Ben. And I just don't see them losing a home opener.
Perch, what's your take?
I think that Drew Lock's a pretty good, pretty exciting quarterback. I think that the Steelers will traditionally play conservative and keep this game close. And 7.5 is a big spread. I'm going to take Steelers 23, Broncos 19. Steelers win but do not cover.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm I think 27-13 might be the most popular score selection in the history of this program. I'm tempted every week to say 27-13. There's something about those numbers. It's just like in your mind you think, yeah, 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals, that sounds doable. And then the other team is like, a couple of field goals and a lucky touchdown, 27-13. I could say that almost every week. That was nearly my prediction last week. I'm going to pick the score of the game, what I think the score should be or could be if the game plan is about right and the expected results are, what's achieved, as opposed to, just playing to win the game by 1 point. Because I can't predict that. I can just tell you that the disparity in these two teams might be worse than last week's games. I think I like. It's hard for me to appreciate saying that I like Daniel Jones a little bit, but he impressed me a little bit last week. I thought he was not, considering the situation, did not do too poorly. I definitely like him better than Drew Lock. I think Drew Lock is going to make a couple of returnable turnovers in this game. And their offensive line, Garrett Bowles is still starting a tackle for them. They've got a lot of problems elsewhere. I kind of like the Steelers' chances in this game to have a comfortable victory for a change. I'll call it 31-13. To me, it's the Houston Texans game of 2008. You have a superior defense that's just dominating tackles that are going to be overwhelmed in the game. And you have an offense that has the ability to, as was said earlier in the program, if you play action pass on your first play of the game, you're going to have a chance to to get a big play or two before they adjust to that, and then you're going to turn it on with the run game. And if you run straight at them, I think it can be successful. So I'll take Steelers to win big, 31-13. Last word, I'll start with you, Perch.
Hey, it's good to be back in the program. Good to have football back. It'll be even better to actually get some fans in the stands and return to normal. So I pretty much completely tuned out to all sports about 6 months ago and just started to get back into it here the last couple of weeks. So it's nice to have some normalcy come back.
Yeah, it's interesting to have sports, to have to have been without sports and have it back to see what you really missed or didn't miss, won't miss. FC, how about you? Last word.
You know, the media really, 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 really sucks when they're hammering a guy for honoring a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. The site was founded by a proud career Army officer who I have nothing but respect for. And I think that people should respect the deeds and the actions of Alejandro Villanueva. I'm not a humongous fan of him on the football field, but the thing that I know is he's a better man than I am. He's a better man than 99% of the people walking this planet. And I think that people should thank him a lot more than they should vilify him.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I just feel like it's a non-story. Like, I'm not interested.
It's a non-fucking story, that fuck Mark Madden.
Yeah. I mean, it's just they need something to talk about all the time, but it's like we have football back. We have a Hall of Fame quarterback who's making his, return to Heinz Field for the first time since he got injured. I'm happy to talk football. The rest of it just feels like everything else in the world right now. It's like there's no point in some kind of conversations that are going to change somebody's mind about something. It's just a chance to bitch for everybody. We got enough bitching to do about football, especially on this show, So at any rate, listen, thanks guys. On behalf of not only SteelPerch and Dom and FC down there in the South, and the aforementioned Fury, who helped us out this week, and Smith the Smoking, Jeremy Coleman, who was with us last week, and everybody at Steeler Fury, all of you watching and listening to the podcast. Let's talk again next week after a gigantic Steelers victory. I'm your host, Bradshaw the Ben, a.k.a. Wil Masisak, a.k.a. Accidental Zen on Twitter. Check us out at SteelerFury.com, and SportsandShit.com is our sponsor. And in the meantime, go get 'em, Steelers.
Go Steelers.